6, and chapter 6 is entitled Me Macho-ette. Larry addressed in the he says portion me macho, and he's addressing men who have condescending attitudes toward women. And I'm answering back and saying, if you're macho, wait a minute, I'm macho-ette. In other words, I have strength too. I have strength in leadership. We have definitely equality. Our rights should be equal. But unfortunately, women in leadership positions have taken on a masculine attitude because they feel competitive with men. There was a book written in I think it was the late 70s, maybe early 80s, Sherry Subcohen, and the title of the book was Tender Power. Sherry was a self-named feminist, embracing all that the feminist philosophy had empowered women in that generation. But she discovered something, having left home, left her babies for a corporate lifestyle, and then choosing to come back home and be a mother. She became criticized by her corporate women friends because of her choice. But she writes very candidly how in the corporate world, when a woman gives up her femininity, she actually loses power of influence in her professional environment or her professional field. Here are some of Sherry's words. The true female influence changes domineering masculine management styles to a more family environment of cooperation and team building. It is very important as women for us not to abandon our femininity when we are in corporate environments. I served on a board of director of a multi-million-dollar corporation. And while I was seated on that board for 8 years, some of those years I was the only female. And it was not at that time that I was to try to prove my strength through asserting myself, through domineering attitudes or competitive attitudes and posture toward men. When I went into that environment, I understood clearly that it was my feminine contribution from my intelligence, from my experience, but my feminine contribution gave them a perspective that actually empowered the decision making. So ladies, in your home and in your family, understand that your feminine nature is a very special part of who God created you to be. And don't abandon this feminine nature of tenderness in order to be assertive and have a perception of power or strength. But when you combine your tenderness with strength, you have absolutely the best outcome. Jesus talked about this in Matthew 11. He said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden." That is people who is carrying emotional anxiety. "Come to me and learn from me, for I am tender." When you live in emotional anxiety, you will lose your tenderness and become firm and aggressive. But he's calling us back to a place of tenderness. I am tender, I am gentle. So I want to ask you today, have you lost your gentleness, your sense of femininity? Listen to the tone of your voice. Look at the expressions on your face. And come back to the ette side of macho. Be the macho-ette in the family. Support your husband, encourage him, and then live in the strength of who God created you to be as a woman. When you do this, you will gain a better outcome, because strength combined with gentleness will actually accentuate your power, not decrease your power. So you don't have to fear losing your identity and losing who you are when you take the gentle side. If you look at the combination of strength and gentleness, you will see that strength in itself is dominated. It's directive, self-protective, it's connecting, not connecting to others. But then when you add tenderness to it, you can see that you can have sensitive strength. When you add tenderness to power, you can have empathetic leadership. Tenderness with power gives you a loving force. In other words, if you need to make a point, you can do that in a very loving, humble, articulate way. You don't have to abandon your idea in order to live in your femininity. It gives you considerate ability to influence. So you influence not by an approach or an attempted approach of domineering an environment, but your influence comes through consideration. And then you would, let's say, if you are combining strength with tenderness and you need to enforce something with your family, in your family or in your children, you have to put pressure on the situation. When you put pressure on the situation, you still do it with a sense of kindness, gentleness, and consideration of what the response will be. I just want to caution you, don't put pressure on your husband. It doesn't work. But nevertheless, your femininity isn't a weak place. It is a strengthening place, and God has strengthened you, and He values you as a woman. Don't abandon it.